Hey guys, welcome back to another TFT video. Today we're going over the Synergies tier list of 9.19. Keep in mind that you should never force a composition and that going for a Synergy in S tier does not guarantee you a victory over a Synergy in D tier. There are many other factors involved between items and what champions you get from early to late game. However, we're here to show what are the Synergies that are most worthwhile and consistently placing in the top 4. We evaluate not only how consistent the build wins, but also how hard the criteria are to achieving the build, the items required, and also the Synergy at its different tiers. But first, I'd like to remind you to click on the link below and take a look at ProGuides.com if you want to learn more about teamfight tactics. ProGuides will always have info on the newest patches, best builds, and strategies. There are all kinds of different resources from top players to help you become the best player that you can be, including coaching. So be sure to check out ProGuides.com using the link in the description. Alright, let's get right back into the video. This patch brought a lot of changes to Synergies, seeing huge changes to meta stompers like Void, along with buffs to a lot of undervalued units and new items. So let's begin starting with our S tier Synergies. For our S tier Synergy, we have Dragons. Even though it received nerfs from 83% to 75% magic resistance, this change was not enough to push Dragons out of favor. Its units Pantheon, Asol, and Shyvana are all extremely powerful late game, making it favorable to run as well. Dragons also have some room to fit in Guardians with Pantheon to try to fight against their more physical damage counters like Draven. Next up, we have Knights, one of the stronger Synergies that has been seeing more and more play. Last patch's Knight buff, alongside Mordekaiser's buff this patch, pushed Knights to an S tier. Even though Sejuani got nerfed, she's still one of the best crowd control units in the game. Alongside this, the easy access to run 4 Knights early on as well makes it easy to transition with and powerful Synergies to play around like Darius's Imperial, Poppy's Yordle, and Mordekaiser's Phantom. The only change Elementals received this patch was Anivia receiving buffs for stronger consistency. The Golem provides a strong amount of effective health for your team to play around, and the units for Elementals are all quite powerful. Kennen, Brand, Lissandra, and Anivia all being great carries. This Synergy gets an S tier due to its powerful units and generally strong benefit. Elementals also fits into Ninja Elemental Assassins, with Kennen being an Elemental Ninja and Brand fitting as a Demon for Evelynn. Assassins, also receiving slight nerfs this patch, also have become an incredibly strong Synergy with the introduction of Sparring Gloves, a crit chance item. This item gives a lot of consistency to their damage, and also items like Infinity Edge can make their burst incredibly deadly. Units like Akali, Rengar, Katarina, and Zed are all fantastic carries as well. Assassins also have a lot of different options for Wild, Ninjas, Imperials, and Void to adapt against any threats. Moving on, we have Imperials. We highly rate this Synergy due to the strength of Katarina, Swain, and Draven all being extremely powerful carries. While Darius isn't as strong, he's still a Knight. With the double damage from Imperials being mixed, it makes it harder for enemies to build around it. Units like Katarina and Draven are capable of solo carrying entire teams alongside the Imperial buff and a strong front line. Ninjas are up next, receiving a small buff this patch from 70 to 80 bonus AD and ability power at 4. Every ninja is extremely powerful on their own, only made stronger with just the solo ninja bonus. This Synergy only gets stronger when combined with Assassins, making Zed and Akali have an incredible amount of damage when critting. This also makes Sparring Gloves a lot more valuable for them, granting even more crit chance. Ninjas have also had severe problems in the mid-game while searching for Akali, but with the reduced player damage this patch, they have an easier time surviving the transition from 1 to 4 ninjas. And finally, we have Sorcerers getting an S tier for how powerful its benefit is for how easy it is to fit into any team. Units like Twisted Fate, Lulu, Ahri, Aurelion Sol, and Morgana are all very strong sorcerers that can fit into many comps. It also makes your other carries like Kennen or Swain deal even more damage as well. Sorcerers receive a 9 trait bonus as well, but it is too difficult to pull off and probably won't see much play in the current meta. Now that we've gone over the S tier Synergies, it's time we move on to our A tier Synergies. Gunslinger getting Titanic Hydra changes and the new item Giant Slayer, also known as Last Whimper, gives them a lot more damage options besides red buff. Their counter, Knights, is a lot easier to handle with the introduction of Giant Slayer. Titanic Hydra is also extremely powerful when hyper-rolling Gunslingers for 3 stars due to their incredibly high base health. Alongside Gunslingers, Blademasters gets an A tier due to their synergy with Slingers and also its effectiveness alongside Draven. If you have a Blade of the Ruined King, the Blademaster's autos on Slingers lets them apply on hits like Hush, Titanic Hydra, Curse Blade, Swordbreaker, and Giant Slayer a lot faster, making Blademaster Gunslingers a very powerful combo this patch. Despite 6 shapeshifters getting nerfed alongside Gnar and Shyvana, shapeshifters are still a very powerful synergy, providing a lot of mixed damage, tankiness, and crowd control. Every shapeshifter gives different options to play around, like wild yordles, dragons, or demons. 3 shapeshifters are still an extremely powerful early game and late game synergy to run, but definitely not as strong as it once was. Next up, Yordles got mittens this patch, along with a slight nerf to their 6 Yordle synergy and addition of a 9 Yordle synergy. 6 Yordles gives more room for viability without having to run units like Tristana, and giving extremely high dodge chance to units like Shyvana. While their biggest threat, sorcerers, still remain, the removal of rapid-fire cannons' guaranteed autos has provided less counter options for them to excel. The new addition 9 Yordles is also incredibly unlikely, requiring 3 spatulas and all 6 Yordles. Phantom is up next in our A tier due to the overall strength of the synergy and units. Mordekaiser receiving another buff lets him scale better than normally into the late game, especially when 3-starred. Kindred and Karthus also are decent units to run. The ability to essentially kill a random enemy unit is strong, especially when it comes without any downsides. It can hit an important carry like Gnar. Exile is a synergy exclusive to Yasuo, and it gets an A on our list for how effective it is. Doubling a unit's health, especially one that can apply AoE on hit and CC, is very powerful when played around. Though Yasuo hasn't received many changes recently, but has more on-hit items to use. Moving on, we have Demons. Though not receiving many changes, they are still a strong synergy. The mana gain for units like Brand, Morgana, Evelynn, and so on increases their damage a lot more than most people would expect. Darken, the Demon Spatula item, is also an incredibly powerful item on a lot of units like Aurelion Sol, Gnar, and Katarina. Finally, we have Hextech, a very disruptive synergy. Though it can be played around, this synergy can be really effective in the mid-game when most people might not expect it. A lot of carries like Kennen also heavily depend on their items to be useful, so if you disable it, it can easily change the course of the fight. Vi and Jinx receiving buffs also makes the units not detrimental to run. They are a good duo in Gunslinger Brawlers, Jace and Vi for Shapeshifter Brawlers, Camille and Jinx for BladeMaster Gunslingers. Moving on, we have some synergies that are around average power levels, the B-tier synergies. First up, we have Robot on our B-tier list. Blitzcrank receiving some small buffs along with his ability being incredibly strong against certain compositions makes Robot a B-tier. Blitzcrank applies a lot of pressure to the backline, and if the enemy fails to play around him, you can easily win your fights, typically shutting down their main carry. Robot, however, does not provide much more than that. It is very utility-based and can be played around, leaving it around average power level. Pirates is next, with their ability to generate economy extremely quickly early game. With player damage being reduced, Pirates becomes more consistent. Though Pike, Graves, and Twisted Fate don't have much synergy together, it can also be considered a benefit for Pirates, allowing you to lose streak a lot easier. Even though they're not a combat synergy, they can help you snowball gold early on in the game, which can be prevalent in this meta. Though the randomness factor of the gold can lead it to being inconsistent. Rangers only get a B tier from us despite their strong synergy with Giant Slayer. The biggest problem Rangers face is fighting assassins, not really having much counterplay around them except for Kindred. If there are no assassin players, the composition can definitely be an A tier, but the rising popularity in assassins makes Rangers a very unappealing synergy. Maybe with buffs to Kai'Sa, there might be more popularity in Rangers, but due to her being underwhelming as a 5-cost late game option, it only remains as a B tier. B stands for Brawlers. Even though Vi, Blitzcrank, and Volibear received buffs, they still feel unappealing compared to other front lines like Knights or Shapeshifters. Knights are weaker to magic than Brawlers, but have stronger units and better synergies. Shapeshifters, even after the nerfs, still stack up a ton of health and having extremely powerful units like Gnar and Shyvana. However, if none of these options are available, then Brawlers is a pretty decent pickup for a front line due to them being typically uncontested. Even though 4 Wild received buffs to guaranteed auto attacks, this synergy is average overall. Removing dodge chance is only useful if facing against Yordles or Phantom Dancers. Along with this, the units for Wild are awkward to put in, Gnar, Rengar, and 3-starred Nicolai being the only good late game units. Ahri and Warwick aren't that great, and it can be difficult to decide if it's worth running them to avoid dodges. The attack speed bonus, however, works well with a lot of units like Twisted Fate and Shyvana, so it remains as a B tier for us. On to our weaker side of the list, we have our C tier synergies. Guardian synergy is not rated lowly for its units, but the bonus it provides is very minimal. The armor bonus is decent, but doesn't serve much when a majority of late game comps are magic damage, like Brand, Aurelion Sol, Akali, and Katarina. In a lot of cases, Guardians are better swapped out for a different synergy unless the lobby is strictly physical damage, which is very unlikely. Glacial received some changes this patch, but it isn't enough to rate this synergy highly. The biggest problem Glacials face is the units don't work that well with it, making it only worth running 2 Glacials at most a lot of the times. Sejuani and Braum have low attack speed, and Anivia and Lissandra are spellcasters. Ashe combined with Rangers and Volley after his slight buffs are the only ones who use it efficiently, making it a weak splash synergy. Void, once being the strongest synergy, has fallen out of favor, getting a C tier from us. Kassadin receiving nerfs makes him a bad carry, Kha'Zix falling off hard in the late game, Rek'Sai receiving nerfs, and Kai'Sa being generally weak unless 2-starred and stacked with items, which is incredibly unlikely a majority of the time. This only leaves Cho'Gath as a viable late game carry option. It isn't worth running the other units who don't synergize with true damage as well, and only running 2 Void only gives a coin flip which isn't reliable enough. And last but not least, the weakest synergy on our D tier synergies. We have Nobles. This synergy used to be the strongest in the game, but it is no longer worth running. The synergy's biggest problem is not being worth it for the units it runs. Garen, Fiora, Vayne, and Lucian are weak units in the late game, though Garen is a knight and Vayne and Lucian can be somewhat decent carries when played around. However, it isn't worth taking up 6 slots, having a severe lack of damage, and the stats provided Nobles not being enough to keep a lot of the units alive. Since half of the Nobles are 1 costs, this also means their stats are bad as well. That is it for today's video. We hope you enjoyed this tier list. Was there any rating that you guys didn't agree with? What do you think is the strongest synergy this patch? Let us know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and we will see you all next time.